Let's all thank the family maid, she said into the microphone, smiling at me over the glittering rim of a champagne flute, for keeping the house tidy enough for a real wedding. Laughter detonated like glass hitting tile. I felt it in my bones more than my ears. The ballroom lights were hot on my cheeks, the gold uplights licking the walls, the chandelier shivering with every ripple of mirth. My son stood behind her, jaw tight, eyes fixed on a point just left of my face, studying the sconce, the floor, anything that wasn't his mother. I tasted metal. It was my own silence. I had dressed carefully that afternoon, a dove-gray gown with sleeves that kissed my wrists, a small pearl pin that used to be my mother's, heels I could stand in for hours without wobbling. But the way her cousins looked me up and down, cheap, provincial, wrong, made the fabric feel like a uniform issued to the help. One of them lifted a phone, recording. Another covered her mouth to murmur something that burst into a snort. "Listen to her accent," one aunt stage whispered. "So sweet, so old country." I smiled the tight smile women wear when chairs are pulled out from under them in slow motion. I could have left. I could have walked out and let the door swing shut and the story write itself without me in it. Fragile mother. Can't take a joke. But I had learned something in my life. Something expensive. People like that don't want you to leave. They want you to stay and get smaller until you fit the outline they drew for you. I pulled my shoulders back until the gown remembered it was chosen, not tolerated. The bride, her name is Alina, and she is visibly pregnant in a fitted white silk that glows like a soft moon, kept talking. "Adam likes things simple," she cooed, casting a hand toward my son. "He gets that from his mother, who's always practical." Laughter again, lighter this time, the "we're all friends here" kind. She shifted the mic, the spotlight gilding the curve of her cheek. So practical that she tried to convince us a backyard ceremony would be intimate. She mimed the word with air quotes. But we want better for our baby. I don't remember deciding to breathe again. I remember the violinist stopping mid-phrase, uncertain. I remember my sister Farah's hand on my elbow under the table, 3 small squeezes that said, "Don't move. Not yet." I remember the hotel air smelling of lilies and buttercream, and the faint electric scent of the audio board warming under its lights. And I remember the envelope. It sat in my clutch like a sleeping animal, thin, heavy with consequence. 3 weeks ago, after 2 long conversations with my own conscience and one longer one with a lab technician who insisted on being unbearably careful, I had placed a request I never imagined my mouth would form. A paternity test. Not because I wanted to shame a young woman on her wedding day. God knows. I've mopped enough floors of other people's messes to know humiliation leaves a permanent ring. But because something in the timeline never made sense, and the way Alina's mother had pushed contracts in front of my son for signatures, prenup adjustments, inheritance fast tracks, just tidying loose ends, darling, set off the same alarm in me that rings right before a pan burns. The numbers were off by weeks. The math didn't love him, so I did what mothers do. I made a quiet plan to protect the child I birthed. Alina's speech swelled toward a finale. "We're starting a new tradition," she announced, "where love is bigger than thrift." She lifted her glass again. "To the family that raised a decent man," she paused, eyes gleaming, "and to the family that will refine him." There are moments when a room tips. It doesn't look like anything. No one falls, nothing breaks. But the air leans, and every face in it slides into the role they secretly wanted. I saw it then. Her cousins turned, hungry for the next cutting line. Her aunts smug with second-hand superiority. 2 of my relatives shrinking back into their chairs like furniture. I saw Adam, My boy, who once slept with his hand in my hair when thunder scared him, swallow hard and look at the floor. He was good, too good. He believed kindness could outlast contempt if it just kept showing up on time. Say something, Farah breathed. Not yet, I murmured, and lifted my glass with polite precision. The MC reached for the mic as Alina handed it back, but she commandeered it once more. Oh, she chirped. One more thing. She turned toward me like a cat discovering a string. We'll be hiring staff after the honeymoon. If you know any good. She widened her eyes, drenched in innocence. Housekeepers, do share. Someone experienced. A soft ooh ran through the crowd. Experienced. Housekeeper. I placed my glass down so gently the stem didn't even tremble. I could tell you I was flooded with rage. I wasn't. Rage is hot and honest, a flare. This was colder, cleaner. It felt like stepping into a walk-in freezer and finding the air, for once, too crisp for lies to fog. I slid my chair back. The scrape was small, decisive. Heads turned. Alina's smile sharpened. Adam's head jerked up. Mom, he started, warning stitched into the single syllable. He was thinking of optics, of his boss's table, of the photographer's lens. He was thinking of peace. I was thinking of truth. I stood, gathered the little clutch, and moved toward the stage. Every step was a metronome. The aisle of round tables opened like a mouth swallowing its words. Someone filming lowered their phone as if a teacher had entered the room. When I reached the dais, the MC, blessed nervous child, offered me the microphone with both hands. Just a minute, I said, my voice steady enough to carry without cracking. I didn't look at Alina. I looked at my son. Adam, I said, and something in how I said his name made the room sit straighter. You once told me I was your first home, that I made small things feel like abundance. A ripple. Today, I'm going to do what homes do best. I'm going to hold what's true, even if the storm outside doesn't like it. Alina laughed, a bright, brittle tink. Oh, this is sweet. I turned to her finally. Earlier, you called me the family maid. I let the words hang like wet laundry. There are worse things to be than a woman who knows how to clean up other people's messes. A few throats cleared. One aunt stopped smiling. I rested the microphone on the stand. With my free hand, I opened the clutch. The envelope gleamed like a slice of winter. I felt the entire ballroom lean forward on its collective vertebrae. I have an envelope here, I said, calm as a surgeon. I've been holding it for weeks. I prayed I would never need to open it. I looked at Adam again. I prayed love alone would be enough to keep our hands gentle and our voices kind. My gaze moved back to the bride, whose mouth had gone small. But love without truth is charity that curdles. Alina's mother stood halfway, then thought better of it. The cousins craned, hunting drama with the noses of hounds. The chandelier hummed. Beyond the doors, the corridor's air conditioner sighed once and fell still. This envelope, I went on, contains an answer none of us should have sought on a night meant for blessing. My fingers slid under the sealed edge and paused. I could feel the room's breath snarling into one rope. Mom, Adam said quietly, plea and warning and wonder braided together. Please don't. I looked at him and saw every age he had been. The baby who clutched my finger like a life raft. The 7-year-old who wept when a bird hit the window. The teenager who carried groceries for our neighbor without being asked. I also saw the man he might become if I said nothing, bent around a lie, teaching his own child to live on compromised air. I lifted the flap. A murmur rippled the tables. Alina's hand flew to her belly, a gesture both tender and tactical. "This is cruel," she said, her voice catching prettily. "She's jealous. She can't stand that I'm finally giving this family a real heir." The word heir clicked like a lock picking itself. Somewhere, cutlery chimed against porcelain as a hand shook. I raised the first page halfway out of the envelope, just enough for the bolded words to be seen by those nearest the stage. A cousin stood on her toes. A videographer toggled his focus and felt, I am sure, like he was capturing an eclipse. "I will read only one line," I said softly, "and then I will put it away." The paper rasped against my skin. "But I will not be called a maid tonight without reminding this room who has actually been doing the quiet labor of protecting a good man from a very polished story." Alina took one step toward me. Her perfume, white florals, expensive and cold, brushed my throat. "If you say one more word," she whispered so only I could hear, "you'll never see him again." I met her eyes, and for the first time I saw what I had been trying not to. Not just insecurity dressed like elegance, but calculation wearing a veil. Not fear. Strategy. "You don't decide that," I whispered back. "Truth does." I brought the page to the microphone, and as the room pin-dropped into the kind of silence that hurts, I read, "Probability of paternity, 0.00%. The chandelier hummed. The violinist made a sound like a breath caught on a string. Adam's glass slipped in his hand, denting the linen instead of breaking. Alina didn't faint. She froze, like a portrait that had suddenly remembered it was paint. No one laughed. I slid the paper back into the envelope. "I will not repeat it," I said, placing the sealed thing on the stand as if it were a candle I'd snuffed. "We will speak kindly now. We will step carefully. We will make room for shock and for grief. But we will not mock working hands or the people attached to them, in this house or any other I enter." I looked at my son last. "And we will not pretend to bless what is built on a lie, just because the napkins match." I stepped back from the microphone. The room remained a held breath, a teacup brimming. That was the moment the balance shifted. Not with applause, not with a scene, but with a delicate internal click, like a lock turning for someone on the right side of the door. I handed the envelope to the MC without looking down, and when I turned to leave the stage, Alina spoke at last, voice thin, almost childlike. "You forged it," she said. I stopped, half-turned, and looked at her family, the ones who had laughed so easily. "Then call for verification," I said, steady as prayer. "Call the lab. Call your lawyer. Call truth." Behind her, Adam finally raised his head to look me full in the face. "Mom," he said, voice breaking in a place no microphone could capture. "Don't go." I didn't. I stood there, unmoving, unafraid, while the room decided what kind of story it wanted to be a part of. The ballroom didn't erupt. It shrank. Sound curled into the corners and hid. The chandelier hummed like a throat clearing. People stared at their plates as if the answers were written in the gravy. I stood there with my pulse steadying, aware of the oddest sensation. Not triumph, never that, but a widening, like windows opening in a house that had been shut too long. Alina's face didn't crack, it rearranged. She turned her head slowly toward Adam, searching for a version of him that would save her. "She's lying?" she said, almost gently, as if calming a child. "She's always resented me. She wants you to herself." My son, my quiet, principled boy, looked at me first. Not at the envelope, not at her belly, at me. "Is it real?" he asked, voice scraped down to a wire. "Yes," I said. "I didn't embroider it." Alina's mother surged up from her chair, bracelets chiming like tiny alarms. "This is obscene," she declared. "Weaponizing paper at a wedding." "Weaponizing lineage," Farah shot back from our table, surprising me with how much steel a soft woman can carry when the moment demands it. "Very on brand." The hotel manager glided toward the stage in the way managers do when catastrophe is staging itself with expensive flowers. "Perhaps we could move this to a private room," he murmured. I looked at Adam again, his jaw clenched, then released, the smallest act of bravery. "Yeah," he said hoarsely. "Let's step out." He reached for the microphone, then thought better of it. "Thank you all for coming," he told the room without the mic, as if speaking to his childhood. "We need a moment." We took it in the anteroom, a narrow space off the ballroom with velvet chairs and a too-bright mirror that made every truth look a shade harsher. The door clicked behind us, leaving the noise of the wedding to recover itself. In here, there were 3 of us: Adam, me, and the woman who had just tried to make me a caricature and ended up a stranger to herself. "I can explain," Alina said immediately, hands up, palms forward, the choreography of innocence. "I can explain everything." "Don't," Adam whispered, a word that almost wasn't sound. He was staring at the envelope on the side table as if it were a living thing. He swallowed. "When?" Her gaze flickered. "It doesn't matter." "It matters?" I said, not unkindly. "Start with time. It's the one thing that doesn't lie." She let out a breath that tried to become a laugh and failed. "Before we met," she snapped. "Are you happy?" "Before we met. He left. He doesn't want to be involved. I thought—" She stopped, regrouped, softened her tone like changing filters on a photo. "I thought if I had a stable future, I could be a good mother." "Isn't that what you preach?" She tossed the last word at me like a coin. "Stability, practicality, backyards and thrift." "Stability isn't the same as deception," I said. "One builds a home, the other decorates a lie." She pressed her lips together. "You humiliated me." "I stopped you from humiliating yourself," I replied. "Publicly. Repeatedly. For years." Adam finally touched the envelope, just a fingertip, as though it could burn. "If you had told me—" he began, then cut himself off. He looked up, and I felt his childhood turn a corner. "No," he said. "You shouldn't have had to tell me. I should have felt that something was wrong and asked." There's a special kind of ache reserved for mothers, watching your child blame himself for trusting. "You loved her," I said. "Love lets people borrow your sense until they earn their own." I turned to Alina. "You could have had a family here, truthfully, imperfectly, decently. You chose performance." She squared her shoulders. "What about your performance? The envelope, the timing, the speech. You wanted to make me small." I shook my head. "You did that when you called me your maid." The door creaked open. 2 people slipped in, Alina's mother, drawn tight as wire, and her uncle, the money man, I'd been told, hair silvered at the temples, smile trained for negotiations. The mother spoke first. "This is salvageable," she announced, as if reading a weather report. "We'll say it's a clerical error. We'll threaten the lab. We'll control the narrative." The uncle took a different tack, angling his body toward Adam with practiced concern. "Listen," he said. "What matters is the life you've planned together. Children need fathers. She needs support. You can adopt, officially. The inheritance can be structured." "Stop," Adam said, and there it was, the spine, very much present, very much his. He lifted a hand, and the uncle, a man who had cowed boardrooms, actually paused. "You're talking about my life as if it's a spreadsheet? I'm a person. My mother is a person." The uncle tried to smile. Of course, of course." Also, Adam added, voice steadier, you don't get to say inheritance in this room. Alina's mother snapped. Why not? It's the only reason she tossed her chin at me, has any power left. My power doesn't come from money, I said quietly. It comes from being willing to lose it rather than live wrong. I reached into my clutch and pulled out a second envelope, the one with my lawyer's card and the draft I had prayed I wouldn't need. Here's the truth you didn't count on, I said, laying it on the table between us. The inheritance you've been eyeing is locked behind honesty clauses your family didn't bother to ask about. The moment fraud touches the marriage, the gates close. The estate becomes a trust for educational and medical needs only. No cash outs, no fancy renovations, no lifestyle funding. It was designed by a woman who scrubbed floors before she signed deeds. My mother. Something shifted, not in the room, in Alina. The performance flickered. For a second, I saw a girl who had been taught that love was an equation, and she simply needed to find the right variables to solve it. Then the mask resettled. This is extortion, her mother hissed. This is boundaries, I said. In the mirror opposite us, the four of us stood like a painting hung crooked. Adam looked thinner in that glass, but taller. Alina's mother fussed with her cuffs. The uncle folded and unfolded his hands. I watched myself be still. Here is what I can offer, I said, breaking the tableau. We end this quietly. No press. No public blame. You go home tonight with your family. You return the gifts. You release the vendors. You apologize. To him, privately. We will pay the caterers and musicians their full fees so their work isn't punished. We will not smear your name. We will not dignify your behavior with more spectacle. In exchange, you do not contact my son again, ever. If you do, the entire paper trail goes to the lawyers and, if necessary, the police. The forged signatures, the expedited prenup edits, the fraudulent attempt to reroute beneficiary payouts through your uncle's consultancy. Yes, we saw that. Go in the file. The DNA results stay sealed unless you force our hand. Your child deserves privacy. So does mine. Silence. You could hear the distant clatter of cutlery returning to plates, the ballroom trying to rehearse normal. Alina's mother stared at me with a hatred so pure, it looked almost holy. You think you're righteous, she said. I think I am finished, I answered. With polite cruelty, with families who measure worth in linens and vowels, with girls taught to climb men like ladders. The uncle exhaled. We'll go, he said, placing a hand on his sister's arm when she started to protest. Tonight, we'll handle it. He looked at Adam, and for the first time his voice sounded human. I am sorry, he said, and I believed him for about 3/4 of a second. Alina's eyes filled, finally. Not the mist that plays well on video, but a genuine welling that cracked something in me I hadn't expected. I wanted a safe life, she whispered. So did I said, softer than before. And safe and honest can be the same thing, but safe and secret rarely are. They left. The door clicked. The room sighed. Adam sat, hard, on the velvet chair. He covered his face with his hands the way little boys do when they think hiding is possible. I knelt in front of him, mother old, mother new. Look at me, I said, and when he did, his eyes were the color of oversteeped tea. You did not do this, I told him. You did not choose cruelty. You were chosen by it because you are gentle. He laughed once, joyless. I should have listened to you sooner. Listening to me isn't the lesson, I said. Listening to yourself is. He took a breath that trembled at the end. What happens now? Now, I said, standing and offering him my hand. We tell the truth to the room that watched a lie try to make a home. Back in the ballroom, the air had found its voice again, but it spoke in murmurs. People parted as we entered, curiosity frilled with shame. Farah had gathered our side of the family into a gentle, immovable island. The MC, poor soul, looked like a man asked to narrate a hurricane. Adam stepped up to the mic. He didn't clear his throat. He didn't apologize for existing. He simply said, "Thank you for loving us enough to show up." The room hushed. It's gossip. He glanced at me, then into the chandelier's light, as if talking to something higher. "There won't be a ceremony tonight," he continued. A ripple quickly smothered. "We found out something that changes how we move forward. We'll be taking care of the vendors, and you're welcome to eat and dance if you want to salvage the evening. But please don't ask questions of my mother or anyone. We'll share what needs sharing when it's time." He looked over at the musicians. "Could you play something hopeful? Not triumphant, just honest." The violinist nodded, eyes bright with a kind of compassion that makes you want to tip well. A melody rose, simple, clean, like steps taken on steady ground. As people dispersed into clusters, condolences and casseroles of words, the hotel manager approached me. "There's a smaller room prepared," he said quietly. "For your family, if you'd like, a place that isn't a stage." "Thank you," I said. He had been as dignified as anyone could be expected to be while watching a story molt in front of him. We moved our island into that smaller room. Plates arrived, tea arrived, silence arrived, the good kind that lets the nervous system sit. My brother joked gently about the oysters. Farah tucked my hand under her arm like a shawl. Adam ate half a roll, and then another half, like someone remembering how mouths work. My phone buzzed, an unknown number. For a second, my heart leapt back to other warnings. I checked. It was the lab manager, replying to a message I had sent hours earlier, the one that asked, "If forced, will you confirm?" The answer was short and beautifully dull. Yes. Certified confirmation available upon authorized request. I put the phone face down and exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. The room had changed temperature again. Warmer, less performative, more hours. Later, as guests trickled out and the staff began the quiet ballet of clearing what could be cleared, a young server approached me, nervous. "Ma'am," she said, "I heard what people called you. My mother cleans houses. She says the ones who scrub know the truth about a place." She hesitated. "You were very brave." "No," I said, and meant it. "I was very tired. Brave is just tired that finally speaks." She smiled with her whole face. "I'm going to write that down." I watched Adam across the room talking to his grandfather's oldest friend, a man who loved him without conditions or trend. He was nodding, listening, not to excuses this time, to blessings disguised as advice. His shoulders had lowered. The boy was gone. The man was arriving. When the night thinned to its last threads, I walked back into the big room one more time. The chandeliers were dimmed, the dance floor reflective and empty, like a lake at dusk. I stood where I'd opened the envelope and placed my palm on the wood as if feeling for a heartbeat. The lesson didn't arrive with trumpets. It came like a whisper from the version of me that used to scrub baseboards and hide bruised feelings in pantries. "Dignity doesn't demand an audience," it said, "but sometimes it needs a microphone." I turned out the light. By dawn, the ballroom had been packed into crates and wheeled down back corridors, but the story was still awake, pacing. I barely slept. When I did, I dreamed in fragments. Silverware clinking like tiny alarms, a chandelier breathing. My son's face when the word truth finally landed where love had sat. I made tea the way women steady their hearts. Kettle first, then the cup that knows their hands. The kitchen window held a thin slice of morning, colorless at the edges, honest at the center. Farah arrived with bread and a face that had cried and rinsed and chosen to keep going. "How's he?" she asked before hello. "Quieter," I said, but quieter like deep water, not like silence. We drove to Adam's apartment with a paper bag of still, warm parathas, the kind he'd devour as a boy after football practice, butter glinting like small suns. He opened the door in yesterday's shirt, sleep creased into his cheek, humility in his eyes. "I didn't know breakfast could smell like mercy," he said, trying to smile. We ate at the counter. No television, no music, just the ordinary symphony of cutlery and breath. He looked at me over steam. "What do we do now?" "We keep our promises," I said. "To the vendors, to ourselves, to the version of you that deserves a wedding later. Maybe smaller, maybe in a backyard, but with vows that don't need subtitles." He exhaled, something unclenching. "I'll call everyone," he said. "Pay in full. And tip," I added. "Generously. No one who made beauty for us should be punished because Truth decided to show up late." We made a list and divided it. He called the florist first. I took the string quartet. Farah handled the venue balance with the kind of grace only a woman who can do math while stirring dal possesses. Each time a voice on the other end braced for anger, we answered with gratitude. Confusion softened into relief. "We're so sorry for what you went through," the violinist said, voice wobbly. "We'll play for you again, next time for the right story." The texts began to arrive as if the city had found my number under a rock. Some were kind, quiet drops of water on hot stone. Some were gossip wearing concern as a hat. A few were knives wrapped in ribbon. Are the rumors true? We always wondered about her. This is why you shouldn't stray out of your circle. I put my phone face down and poured more tea. Around noon, a message came from an unknown contact saved only as Serena. "Events. Please check your email. Important." I opened the attachment. Scan of a contract draft. Red lines annotated in a precise, impatient hand I recognized from place cards and menu proofs. Alina's. The yes. Edits were surgical. Clauses about survivorship benefits nudged. Beneficiary designations rerouted through a consultancy. Another attachment, a recorded voicemail from Alina's uncle, oily even through a speaker. "We just need your son's signatures first. The rest is housekeeping, dear." Housekeeping. The word made my jaw tighten in a way that felt like an old injury remembering weather. I forwarded the email to our lawyer, then to Adam. He read in silence, eyes hardening with each line. "They weren't planning a marriage," he said finally. "They were building a pipeline." "Pretty pipes," Farah sniffed, gold-plated, still sewage. We called our lawyer from the living room because the kitchen had seen enough today. She listened, then gave us the gift of competent sentences. "You're protected," she said. "The honesty clause and the trust structure hold. I'll file notices. No contact direct, only through counsel. If they threaten, we have a response. If they smear, we escalate. We lead with decency. We end with documentation." "Decency first," I echoed, and felt my mother hum in the chandelier of my memory. In the afternoon, I went back to the hotel to oversee what tidying remained. The staff had moved like angels with dolly carts, wordless and watchful. I tipped every hand that had lifted yesterday's weight. One server, the same young woman who'd spoken to me last night, pressed a folded note into my palm. "For you, from someone who couldn't say it out loud." Inside, a grainy photo snapped through a cracked office door. Serena and Alina's uncle leaning over a blueprint of the ballroom. 3 words circled beneath the stage layout. "Mic moment, Maid." I stared at the circle until the ink looked like a bruise. Then I took a breath and put the paper in my clutch with the tenderness you save for dangerous things. As I stepped into the lobby, the hotel manager intercepted me with an expression halfway between sympathy and professional relief. "Mrs. Rahman," he said, "we've handled the deposits, and your instructions about staff gratuities are done. There's one more thing." He lowered his voice. "Ms. Alina checked out at dawn. Her mother left an hour later. No forwarding address." "Runaways don't always know where they're going," I said. "Only what they're leaving?" On the way out, a florist's van idled at the curb, roses breathing their last perfect breaths. I bought 3 stems, cash, no receipt. At home, I tucked them into a juice glass the way poor women make altars. Imperfect, sincere. The doorbell rang at twilight, that hour when colors give up and shadows tell the truth. I expected Farah, or a neighbor with "just checking in" braced on her face. Instead, Alina, alone, without makeup, hair uncoiled, vulnerability standing where calculation used to pose. She held a paper bag like it contained either a bomb or bread. "May I come in?" she asked, voice smaller than I had ever heard it. I looked past her to the street. No cars idled, no ant lurked. "2 conditions," I said. 1, no recording devices. 2, whatever is in that bag stays in your hands until you choose to share it. She nodded. I led her to the living room and left the door open wide enough for the evening to hear. Farah sat on the arm of a chair like a silent witness. Adam remained in the kitchen until I tilted my head and he joined us, slow, wary. Alina perched at the edge of the sofa. From up close, she looked young in a way that hurt. A child who had played adult so hard her bones were tired. The bag crackled. She opened it and lifted out an object wrapped in tissue paper, then another. She set the first on the coffee table. The ring we'd bought together, returned to its box, diamond winking a last line of poetry. The second, an envelope, thicker, older. The paper yellowed at the edges, sealed with a small band of brittle tape. In my mother's handwriting, "For the woman who marries my grandson, if she needs it." The room inhaled like a choir. "Where did you get that?" I asked carefully. Alina looked ashamed. "From," she swallowed, "from your guest room, the day before the rehearsal. It was in the drawer under the shawls. I was looking for, I don't know, advantage? Insurance? God, I sound like a criminal." She folded into herself for a moment, then forced her head up. "I didn't open it. I couldn't. I thought it would be a blessing I didn't deserve, or a curse I couldn't outmaneuver. Both terrified me." I reached for the envelope. My mother's script wavered under my fingers like a voice across water. I didn't open it yet. I had learned not to feed the room all its answers at once. "Why are you here?" I asked. "Really?" Alina's hands fluttered toward her belly, not strategic this time, just human. "Because after we left, my uncle told me to post." She grimaced. "A version, to say you forged the test, to rally sympathy. He wanted me to be a storm so no one would see the theft. I tried to write the post. I couldn't finish the sentence. I realized I don't want to be a mother who teaches a child that lies are blankets." Adam made a sound, small and involuntary. She looked at him like a thirsty person spotting water, and stopped herself from reaching. "I'm not asking for you back," she said. "I'm asking for a way to leave this without burning everything. I brought the ring to return it. And the letter, because—" Her eyes slid to the envelope, then back to me. "If there's mercy in your family, it might be written there." I turned the envelope over and felt the brittle tape resist, then give. Inside, one page, handwritten in that tidy way my mother believed proved your soul had corners. I read in silence first, and then aloud, because some blessings have to be heard to count. To the woman who marries my boy, if you are reading this, on a hard day, remember this: our family values truth more than tradition, kindness more than spectacle, work more than wealth. If you need help, ask. If you made a mistake, tell the truth sooner than later. The price gets higher every minute you wait. And if my son is being foolish, know that I love strong women who can set a table and a boundary in the same breath. I do not demand perfection. I demand honesty. If you can give us that, you are already ours. If not, be brave enough to leave and build a good life anyway. I will pray for you either way. Sadia Rahman. No one spoke. The roses on the side table looked up as if they, too, wanted to be people for a moment. Alina's mouth trembled. I wish I'd read that a month ago, she whispered. You were not ready a month ago? I said. You are barely ready now. She nodded, tears finally spilling. The unglamorous kind, the kind that leaves salt behind. I'm going to my aunt's for a while, she said. Not the rich one, the librarian. She buys dented cans on purpose because she thinks they're lonely. She will tell me the truth until it bruises and then keep loving me anyway. I'll keep the baby. I'll put his father's name on the birth certificate. I will not try to climb you anymore. The room exhaled, grief and relief braided. Adam spoke to the carpet. Thank you for returning the ring, he said. Then he lifted his face and found the person he used to be gentle toward. And for not posting. I almost did, she admitted. But then I heard your mother say last night, we will not dignify your behavior with more spectacle. And I realized I'd been feeding myself on spectacle for years. It doesn't fill you. She stood. The evening clung to her like a shawl. At the door, she turned back and addressed me, not with contempt, not with appeal, just with a kind of prayerful tiredness. If my child ever asks about last night, she said, tell him I did something wrong and a woman told the truth and nobody died from it. I'll tell him, I said, and I'll tell him truth is not a weapon if you hold it with clean hands. After she left, we sat without speaking, 3 people in a room that felt new. Adam touched the letter again as if confirming it hadn't flown away. She stole it, he said, not angry, just amazed at the audacity and the grace braided into one act of return. She returned it, I said. Sometimes that's the beginning. He looked at me. What will we do with it? Frame it, Farah said, surprising us both. Kitchen wall, next to the calendar. Blessing should be at eye level. We laughed, soft and cracked. The sound stitched something. That night, as I washed the teacups, my phone buzzed one more time. A text from the hotel server girl. Saw her leave. No cameras, no uncle. She looked smaller, in a good way. Then, after a beat, you looked taller last night, in a good way. I put the cups upside down on the rack and stood at the sink, letting the water run as if the house were a throat clearing. The window had gone black enough to hold my reflection like a careful hand. The woman in the glass looked older than yesterday, and also somehow new. Not colder, clearer. In the quiet, I remembered another envelope, the one I hadn't had to open, because the room had finally learned the sound of its own conscience. Not all stories get endings. Some get a second draft. In the morning, lawyers would file and phones would ring, and the world would resume its appetite for distraction. But for now, the house breathed, and we breathed with it. And then, because life has a sense of timing, no screenwriter would dare, someone knocked. Not the tentative apology knock. The official, knuckle-solid one that says, I carry consequences. Through the glass panel by the door, I saw 2 silhouettes and a paper folder held just so. I dried my hands and called for Adam. "It seems," I said, half to him, half to my mother's letter on the table, "that truth has brought a friend." The knock had that official cadence, 3 even taps, a pause, then 2 more, as if the night were wearing a suit. I wiped my hands on a towel and felt the house inhale behind me. Farah set the letter back on the table like a talisman. Adam came to my shoulder, taller than the boy I used to pull behind me in crowded markets, steadier than the man who'd stood under yesterday's chandelier. When I opened the door, cool air swept in, carrying a faint smell of rain on hot brick. 2 people stood on the step. The hotel manager, immaculate even at this hour, and Serena, the planner, without her clipboard armor, hair pulled into a sleep-bent ponytail. She clutched a manila folder to her chest the way some women hold regret. "I'm sorry," the manager began, voice low, respectful. "We wouldn't come unannounced unless it mattered." He turned to Serena. She lifted the folder with both hands. "I wrote a statement," she said, eyes darting to Adam, then to me. "Everything I know about the edits, the mic moment notes, the contract changes they asked me to push through. I recorded a voice memo the day they coached me to improvise a problem with the audio so she could retake the mic. I deleted it once. I recovered it." We stepped back to let them in. The living room held us all without judging, the roses on the table listening like small witnesses. Serena set the folder down and slid out a stack of documents, clipped neatly, numbered. She had organized her atonement. "I was raised to think obedience keeps you safe," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Saying no has felt like standing in traffic." She swallowed. "But last night when you said, 'We will not dignify your behavior with more spectacle,' I realized I had been building spectacles for people who confuse cruelty with choreography." She forced a small, wry smile. "And I get paid either way." The hotel manager placed a small gray thumb drive beside the papers. "Security footage from the service corridor and stage wings," he said. "We don't hand this out. We are tonight making an exception. Our counsel approved it after your counsel called." He dipped his chin at me. Our lawyer moved faster than I did when guests wanted chai. Adam exhaled the way men do when something heavy rests on a table instead of their chest. "Thank you," he said. Serena nodded once, and I watched her try on a different shape of herself, one that protects instead of performing. "Miss Rahman," she said, voice thinner. "I can't undo what we planned, but I can refuse to continue it." She hesitated, then added, almost as if asking permission to soften, "I also brought the cake baker's invoice with rush-up charges Alina's uncle tried to charge back to you. I called them. They'll waive it. They were kind." We sat, no formality, some fatigue, while the manager went through an inventory of what would remain and what had already been dissolved. There was something prayerful about mundane details spoken carefully. Linens accounted for, deposits refunded, gratuities distributed. It was like reminding the house that life is a ledger of small, decent acts that add up to something livable. Then the manager cleared his throat. "There is one more reason we came," he said. "It's not pleasant. Alina's uncle called the hotel today and threatened to correct the narrative with press if we didn't provide him with guest contact information and a statement saying your announcement was fabricated." His carefulness around the word announcement was its own kindness. "We declined. We have recorded the call. Our corporate counsel will handle any retaliation." A muscle in Adam's jaw ticked. "He wants a story," he said quietly. "He knows how to sell one," Serena added, a bitter little truth. I stood and poured tea for all of us because hospitality isn't a costume in this house. It's a verb. When I handed Serena a cup, our fingers bumped. She flinched, surprised by her own gratitude. "I'm sorry," she said, earnestly enough to leave a mark. "Be better," I said, not unkindly. "That's the only apology that grows legs." They left with their empty cups and less of their burden. The door shut on the shape of trouble trying to look taller than it was. Farah stretched her arms above her head, spine popping like quiet punctuation. "So," she said, glancing at the folder, the drive, the letter. "We have truth on paper, truth on camera, truth in a grandmother's hand." She looked at me. "What do we do with it?" "Use it if we must," I answered, and not a second sooner. We slept then, the unglamorous, heavy-boned sleep of people who have told difficult truths until their bodies grant them temporary amnesty. Morning came like a soft admission of defeat from the night. I woke to sun on the wall, a bird arguing with its reflection in the window, and the smell of toast, because Adam had decided that small acts of care are a kind of bravado. The phone chimed. Not a text. An email from our lawyer with subject line: "Notices filed. No further direct contact." It included a neat list: cease and desists, a letter to Alina's uncle's consultancy, documentation lodged with the registry to flag any fraudulent beneficiary changes. Words like injunctive relief and malicious interference rubbed shoulders with phrases that felt human. Our clients request peace. I forwarded it to Serena with a single line: "For your protection too." Within a minute, she replied with a sunflower emoji, and then, "My mother cleans offices at night. She says lemon oil solves more than you'd think." I smiled to myself. Working women have a way of finding each other even in email subject lines. We framed my mother's letter before lunch. Farah wiped the glass twice, more for ritual than clarity, and hung it in the kitchen by the calendar, as promised. It looked ordinary there, the highest compliment, and whenever my eye grazed it, I felt less alone inside my own decisions. By afternoon, the messages from last night's guests shifted tone. Shock mellowed into thanks. A cousin wrote, "I'm sorry I laughed when she called you Maid. My mother scrubbed hospital floors for 30 years. I forgot I am her son." The young server texted a photo. 3 waiters taking their break on crates in the loading bay, reading aloud lines from the letter between bites of leftover profiteroles. "We put the good words in our pockets," she wrote. Toward evening, Adam stood in the doorway holding 2 envelopes like scales. One was the manila folder Serena had delivered. The other held the ring, restored to its little velvet bed. "I've been thinking," he said, "about what we keep and what we return." "We keep what's honest," I said. "We return what never belonged to us, even if we once wanted it desperately." He nodded. "I want to write to her," he said, meaning Alina. "Not to reopen, to release, and to tell her about the letter. Not as mercy, but as a map, if she wants it." "Right," I said. "Maps find people when they're ready to read them." We walked outside after dinner. No destination, just a perimeter to reassure the house that the world still had edges. Golden Hour laid its old flattery across everything. Even the cracked sidewalk looked cinematic. At the end of the block, our neighbor Mrs. Dutta watered her dahlias in a robe that had seen all her grandchildren's birthdays. "Beta," she called to Adam, "you'll plant something else. It will bloom in its own season." Then she winked at me. "And you, stop looking like a wall. You are a doorway." We returned to find the quartet waiting on our small patch of lawn, instrument cases like little sleeping animals at their feet. The violinist, the one who'd played Honesty like a melody last night, held up his hands, sheepish. "We had tonight free," he said. "We don't like endings with echo. We prefer cadence." They tuned under the porch light. Neighbors drifted over with folding chairs and Tupperware diplomacy. Farah produced cups from nowhere. I boiled chai. Adam carried out mismatched plates like a man setting down weight and picking up rhythm. The first notes were modest, then sure. Music is a kind of justice when words are tired. Halfway through the second piece, the young server from the hotel appeared at the gate, hair in a braid, an older woman at her side with lemon oil hands. "My mother," she said simply. "We made room. We always make room for the ones who keep places clean." When the quartet paused, people did what they do when relief and hunger share a table. They fed each other stories. A retired nurse said she'd been called girl at 50 by a doctor who forgot her years. A teacher confessed she kept her best shoes in a bag because the district office had carpet and her classroom did not. We told no gossips and refused no truths. The night softened around us like a shawl laid over tired shoulders. It would be naive to pretend power remained wholly on our side after that. Alina's uncle sent a lawyerly email bristling with unspent rage. A cousin posted something slippery online about boundaries turned into barbed wire and tagged no one but meant me. The world does not applaud dignity on command. But the notices held. The hotel held. Serena held. We held. And the machinery that wanted to grind us into a headline lost momentum without our silence to grease it. Later, when the last chair scraped home and the quartet packed their cases with the tenderness musicians reserve for objects that make sound into shelter, Adam stood beside me at the kitchen sink. We rinsed cups in companionable noise. "I thought I wanted a grand wedding," he said. "Turns out I wanted a true one." "You'll have it," I said. "Maybe with 3 tables and a cake that leans and a backyard that remembers your childhood. Maybe with a woman who reads the letter on the wall and nods." He dried his hands and touched the frame lightly. "She'll read it with her own eyes," he said. "Not through me." Before bed, I took the envelope with the lab result from the drawer where I'd put it when tears made reading impossible. I slipped it into a new folder labeled "In my mother's hand, in my mind." Only if needed. There are truths that belong in the kitchen light and truths that can sleep until the court wakes them. Wisdom is deciding which is which. I turned out the lights and watched the house become a series of careful darks. My reflection in the window met my gaze without flinching. The woman looking back was not a maid, though she knew how to clean. She was not a queen, though she knew how to wear a crown without her neck aching. She was simply someone who refused to mistake humiliation for fate. If there is a lesson here, and every old woman with a soft voice and a hard-earned spine will tell you there is, it is this: dignity is not distance. It's closeness to the truth, even when it burns the fingers that open the envelope. Mercy is not pretending nothing happened. It is choosing not to throw people into the fire you walked through to get here. Revenge, when it's righteous, isn't spectacle. It's the quiet click of a door that will not open to what almost broke you. I set my palm against the kitchen wall where my mother's letter hung. The paper was cool through the glass. Somewhere outside, a dog barked at nothing, and then at the next nothing. Life resumed its unglamorous miracle. "Good night," I told the house, and perhaps the version of me that had been waiting years for a room to stop laughing. We slept, and nothing in the hall laughed again.